My girlfriend took a trip to Vegas with her friends. While she was there, one of them posted a clip showing a man's hand on her thigh, and the ring on his finger wasn't mine. I didn't argue, didn't text, didn't even call. I simply moved all my belongings out while she was gone. She came home to an empty place. My name is Daniel, I am 31, and I work in logistics planning for a regional retail chain in Phoenix. My days are structured and predictable: early gym, office by 8, home before 6 most nights. I rent a modest 2-bedroom apartment close to work because I prefer short commutes over status. Most weekends I help my older brother with his small contracting business or watch games with friends. I keep a tight budget, no debt, steady savings, nothing flashy but stable. About 2 years ago I started dating Alyssa, 28, who works in event promotion and nightlife marketing. We have been together just over 26 months and moved into the same apartment last summer. The lease is in both our names, and we split utilities, though I cover most groceries. Alyssa travels often for work or what she calls networking trips with friends. Until recently, I believed the relationship was functional even if her personality was sharper than mine. Alyssa has always had a blunt edge that people either find funny or exhausting. With strangers, she is charming, but at home, she tends to speak like every inconvenience is someone else's fault. Waiters are slow, drivers are idiots, co-workers are incompetent. I usually ignored it because she never directed that tone at me in the beginning. Over time, it started slipping through in small ways: sarcastic comments about my routines, jokes about my predictable lifestyle, remarks about how I should loosen up and spend more money so I would look less boring next to her friends. 2 weeks ago, she left for a long weekend in Las Vegas with 3 girlfriends. She framed it as a girls' reset trip after a stressful quarter. I drove her to the airport early Friday morning, helped with her luggage, and went straight to work. Nothing unusual about that morning, and at the time I expected the weekend to pass quietly. By Saturday night, that expectation was already starting to change. Saturday was quiet on my end. I ran errands, cleaned the apartment, did laundry, the boring stuff Alyssa claims makes me act like a dad. Around 9 p.m., I was on the couch watching a game when my phone buzzed with an Instagram notification from one of her friends, Marissa. I barely know Marissa. She is the type who treats every night out like content creation, constant filming, constant posing, constant duck lips. Alyssa calls her the honest one, which usually means rude with a ring light. The notification was a story clip, maybe 7 seconds long. Dark club lighting, loud music, Alyssa laughing with her head tilted back like she wanted the whole room to notice her. The camera dipped down and there it was, a man's hand resting on her upper thigh, just under the hem of her dress. Not brushing past. Not accidental. Settled. Comfortable. Familiar. My first thought was that it might be a friend's hand, but it was clearly a bigger hand, darker hair on the knuckles, and a wedding band. And I know what my hands look like. Mine do not have a ring. I do not wear jewelry at all, not even a watch. The clip ended before the camera showed his face. Marissa added text over it that said Vegas things with a laughing emoji, like it was cute, like it was harmless. Alyssa had reposted it to her own story without trimming it, which told me she either did not notice or did not care. I sat there replaying it until the little story bar looped again and again. I did not feel rage. I felt that cold math feeling where your brain starts tallying facts. Alyssa in a club. Alyssa letting a man touch her like that. Alyssa broadcasting it. And the ring on his finger that was definitely not mine. I checked the time. It was 6 a.m. in Vegas. She was still out. I did not text. I did not call. I did not do the thing where you beg for reassurance while someone else is living like you do not exist. I opened our shared calendar and looked at the days she would be gone. 3 more nights. Then I got up, grabbed a trash bag from under the sink, and walked into the bedroom. I did not pack angrily. That part matters. I packed like I was preparing for a planned move, because in that moment it became one. Clothes first, folded. Work shoes, gym shoes, jackets. I skipped anything that could be debated as shared. I left the couch, the bed, the TV. I took what was unquestionably mine. While I worked, I replayed small moments from the past year that suddenly made more sense. Her phone always face down. The way she'd accuse me of being insecure whenever I asked normal questions. The comments about how Vegas was a place where nothing counted because everyone was there to escape reality. At the time, I thought it was just her being dramatic. Now it sounded like rehearsal. Around midnight, I loaded the first trip into my car. I drove it to my brother's garage and came back for the second load. By the time I finished, The apartment already felt different. Not empty yet, but neutral, like a hotel room after checkout. I slept on the couch for a few hours, then woke up and started the logistics. I emailed the landlord to explain I would be vacating and asked about removing my name from the lease when Alyssa returned. I transferred my portion of the utilities into her name. I changed my mailing address. All boring administrative stuff that becomes very easy when emotions are no longer part of the decision. Sunday afternoon, she texted me. Just a selfie of her by the pool with a caption that said "miss you" with a winking emoji. I did not respond. An hour later, she sent another one asking if I was mad about her not answering the night before. Still nothing from me. By Sunday night, Marissa had posted more clips. Different men, different hands, different drinks. Alyssa looked like she was performing happiness for an audience, loud and exaggerated. The comments were full of people hyping her up, telling her she deserved fun. I muted all of it. Monday morning before work, I took the last box out. I left my keys on the kitchen counter, wiped down the surfaces, and took one final look around. No note, no speech, no dramatic goodbye. I locked the door behind me and went to work like it was a normal Monday. She landed Tuesday afternoon. I know this because my phone started lighting up around 3:40 p.m., first a missed call, then another, then a text that just said, "Are you home?" I stayed at my desk and finished my workday like normal. There was no urgency left in me. Whatever was waiting on the other end of that conversation wasn't going to change reality. At 5:12 p.m., she sent a message that finally acknowledged something was wrong. "Why is the apartment empty?" I read it once and put the phone face down. 10 minutes later, the calls started again. Back to back. No voicemail. Alyssa hates leaving voicemails. She prefers confrontation in real time where she can control the tone. I got home to my brother's place around 6. He asked how Vegas went for Alyssa. I told him it ended the relationship. He nodded like he already suspected something like that would happen eventually and didn't ask follow-up questions. At 6:47 p.m., I finally checked my phone. There were 16 missed calls and a wall of texts that escalated quickly. Confusion turned into anger. Anger turned into insults. She accused me of overreacting, of being dramatic, of abandoning her without a conversation. She said, "What kind of man just disappears like that?" She said I embarrassed her. That one stood out. Not that she hurt me. Not that something happened. That I embarrassed her. I replied with one message. I saw the video. I moved out. Then I blocked her number. Instagram, iMessage, WhatsApp, everything. No dramatic announcement. No explanation spiral. Just a hard stop. I wasn't interested in debating definitions of cheating with someone who was already workshopping excuses. The silence afterward was noticeable. Not peaceful exactly, but contained. Like closing a door on a room that was getting loud and chaotic. I already knew what the next messages would be if I let them through. Context. Minimizing. Blame shifting. I had heard variations of it before any time she was clearly in the wrong. Blocking her wasn't an emotional reaction. It was preventative maintenance. I went to sleep without my phone buzzing on the nightstand, and that alone told me I made the right call. By Wednesday morning, the consequences started arriving through other people. My brother told me Alyssa had shown up at the apartment complex the night before, dragging her suitcase back up 3 flights of stairs because she forgot her key fob didn't work without my garage remote. The leasing office had already noted the move out. She apparently stood in the hallway calling my name like I was hiding inside an empty unit. She wasn't. Since she couldn't reach me directly, she pivoted. Mutual friends started texting. At first, it was the neutral ones asking if we were okay. Then it was the ones clearly sent to gather information. I gave everyone the same response. We broke up. I moved out. I'm not discussing details. That boundary didn't sit well with Alyssa. She emailed me from her work account. Long message. Alternating between apology and accusation. She said blocking her was immature. She said adults talk things out. She said nothing physical happened, and I was throwing away 2 years over social media nonsense. She also reminded me that we had shared plans coming up and that disappearing made me look guilty. I read it once, closed the tab, and added her email address to my block list. No reply. No rebuttal. No final statement. I wasn't interested in cross-examining her version of events or participating in damage control. Thursday afternoon, my landlord confirmed my name was officially removed from the lease. Alyssa would need to requalify on her own or find a roommate within 30 days. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing that. Just confirmation that the logistics were complete. That night, she tried one last angle. She had Marissa message me. Not an apology. A warning. She said Alyssa was spiraling. that blocking her was cruel, that I was humiliating her by vanishing instead of letting her explain. As if explaining would retroactively remove a stranger's hand from her thigh. I blocked Marissa too. What surprised me most wasn't Alyssa's anger. It was how quickly the narrative shifted from what she did to how I reacted. That told me everything I needed to know about how the relationship would have handled real problems in the future. By Friday, the noise slowed down. And in that quiet, the absence of stress was louder than anything she ever said. The weekend after she got back was the first real test of the decision. Friday night used to be our default together time. Drinks somewhere loud that she picked, me pretending not to mind the crowd. Instead, I went to the gym, cooked dinner at my brother's place, and watched a movie I didn't have to half pay attention to. The quiet felt unfamiliar, but not uncomfortable. More like my nervous system was finally off duty. Saturday morning, I woke up early out of habit and checked my phone out of reflex. No notifications. No missed calls. No emotional emergencies waiting for my attention. That was new. I went for a long walk instead, grabbed coffee, and realized how much mental space had been freed up now that I wasn't managing someone else's moods. Around noon, a mutual friend, Jason, called. I almost didn't answer, but he's generally reasonable. He asked if I really wasn't going to talk to Alyssa at all. I told him no. He sighed and said she was telling people I abandoned her, that I disappeared without warning, that she was blindsided. I told him I didn't need to correct her version. Anyone who mattered would eventually see the pattern. Anyone who didn't wasn't my problem. Jason didn't argue. He just said he hoped I was okay. That was enough. Later that afternoon, I drove past our old apartment by accident on the way to a hardware store. Her car was parked outside, trunk open, boxes stacked nearby. She looked smaller than I remembered, standing there with her phone pressed to her ear, pacing. For a split second, I felt something like guilt. Not regret. Just the residue of responsibility that takes time to wear off. I didn't stop. That night, I muted a group chat I shared with some of her friends. No big announcement. No exit speech. Just another door quietly closing. By Sunday evening, I realized something important. I hadn't once questioned whether I overreacted. There was no internal debate. No what-if loop. The certainty had arrived immediately and stayed put. That's how I knew this wasn't impulsive. It was overdue. The following week was when the outside opinions got louder. Alyssa stopped framing it as confusion and started framing it as betrayal. I heard this through people who thought they were being helpful. Apparently, I had blindsided her. Apparently, real men fight for relationships. Apparently, leaving without a conversation was emotionally abusive. That last one came from someone who had never seen her belittle a bartender or mock my job in front of her friends. What she never said out loud was that she got caught publicly. That video mattered because it existed, because other people saw it, because it removed her ability to control the narrative privately. If it had stayed in a dark corner of a club with no camera, I'm confident she would have denied it, reframed it, or laughed it off later. The outrage wasn't about losing me. It was about losing the version of herself she curated. Midweek, she tried one more indirect route. She contacted my mother. My mom called me sounding cautious, like she didn't want to take sides without understanding the facts. She asked if something really bad happened or if it was just a misunderstanding. I told her exactly what I saw and exactly what I did afterward. No embellishment. No emotion. Just sequence of events. There was a pause on the line. Then she said she understood. She didn't offer advice. She didn't suggest reconciliation. She just told me she was proud of me for protecting myself. That conversation closed the last door Alyssa might have tried to wedge open. By Thursday, I picked up the last administrative loose end, closing the joint streaming accounts and transferring my playlist to my own profile. Small thing, but symbolic. Everything shared was now separate. That night I sat alone with a beer and realized something uncomfortable. Alyssa never once asked how I felt about the video. Not in the texts I saw. Not through friends. Not through anyone. The focus was always on her shock, her embarrassment, her anger, her loss. That absence of curiosity said more than any explanation ever could. By the end of the week, I stopped feeling like someone who had left. I felt like someone who had been released. About 10 days after everything ended, I ran into someone who hadn't heard Alyssa's version yet. It was a coworker named Nina who used to come over occasionally when Alyssa hosted pregame nights. Nina asked casually how Alyssa was doing in Vegas and then stopped mid-sentence when she saw my face. I told her we broke up while Alyssa was on the trip. Nina looked confused and said Alyssa told people I freaked out and vanished for no reason. So I showed her the clip. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't explain. I just handed her my phone and let it play once. Nina handed it back without saying anything for a few seconds. Then she said, "Yeah, okay, that makes sense." And that was it. No debate. No devil's advocate. No talk about intentions. That interaction repeated itself a few times with different people. Same pattern. Confusion. Video. Clarity. Silence. Alyssa's story only worked in rooms where the evidence wasn't present. I also found out the man in the clip wasn't single. Someone recognized the ring and matched it to a real estate guy from California who was married. Apparently, that discovery caused its own implosion unrelated to me. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing that. Just confirmation that the situation was exactly what it looked like. By the third week, Alyssa stopped being angry and started being nostalgic. I know this because mutual friends mentioned she was posting old photos, captions about growth and lessons, vague quotes about timing and fate. She never tagged me, never apologized publicly, just reframed. I stayed quiet. I signed a new lease closer to work. Smaller place, less storage, more sunlight. I bought a cheap couch and a kitchen table and nothing else for a while. I wanted the space to stay empty until it felt like mine again. By the end of that month, I noticed I wasn't replaying the video anymore. I wasn't rehearsing conversations or imagining alternate endings. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was simply finished. A month later, the story reached what felt like its final echo. I was at a friend's birthday dinner when someone I hadn't seen in a while asked how Alyssa was doing. Not in a probing way, just casual, like asking about the weather. When I said we weren't together anymore, he nodded and said, "Yeah, I heard something about Vegas." That was it. No follow-up. No advice. No judgment. Just acknowledgement. The situation had condensed into a short sentence people could reference and move past. That's when I realized the drama was done, even if Alyssa hadn't fully accepted it yet. She tried once more indirectly. A mutual friend mentioned she was thinking about reaching out to clear the air to get closure. I said I already had closure. I saw what I needed to see. There was nothing left to clarify. The friend didn't push back. Life settled into a new rhythm after that. Work stayed steady. I started cooking again instead of defaulting to takeout because someone else didn't feel like eating in. I redecorated slowly, intentionally, without worrying if something fit a shared aesthetic. The apartment stayed quiet in a way that felt earned. One night, I realized I hadn't checked Alyssa's social media in weeks. Not out of discipline, out of disinterest. She was no longer a question mark in my head that needed answers. What surprised me most was how simple the ending actually was. No big confrontation. No final argument. No drawn-out emotional autopsy. Just information, a decision, and follow-through. That's when it really hit me. The relationship didn't end because of Vegas. It ended because Vegas showed me who I would have been arguing with for the rest of my life if I stayed. The last thing I heard about Alyssa came through someone else, weeks later. Apparently, she told people she learned a lot from the breakup. That it taught her not to take stability for granted. That next time she would choose someone who could handle her lifestyle better. I don't know if she believed that, or if it was just the cleanest way to wrap the story for herself. Either way, it wasn't mine anymore. What mattered was that I never once felt the urge to reach back out. Not to explain. Not to defend myself. Not to correct her version. The silence wasn't a tactic. It was the natural result of clarity. I didn't win anything. I didn't get revenge. I didn't prove a point publicly. I just removed myself from a situation where respect was optional and accountability was treated like an attack. Looking back, the Vegas trip wasn't a betrayal out of nowhere. It was just the first time the disrespect showed up in high definition. With witnesses. With no room to minimize it. I learned that I don't need closure conversations with people who already showed me their limits. I don't need apologies that come packaged with excuses. And I don't need to argue about boundaries with someone who only respects them when they're convenient. I also learned something quieter. Leaving cleanly, without spectacle, without cruelty, without begging, is sometimes the most self-respectful option available. She came home to an empty apartment. I came home to a life that finally felt uncomplicated again. And that was enough.